Good evening and welcome back to No Kings on the Hill with Dr. Hill Law and my co-host as usual, Joe St. Clair. Tonight, we're not here to relitigate 2020. We're not here to trade partisan talking points. We are here to ask a much simpler and far more important question. Can Americans trust their elections in 2026? Because trust doesn't come from slogans. It doesn't come from courts telling people to just move on. And it sure as hell doesn't come from media assurances to tout, oh, there's nothing to see here behind the curtain. Trust comes from a verifiable process. Over the last several years, President Trump forced our country to confront election systems that have been weakened for decades and went largely unscrutinized because they weren't questioned. Mail-in ballots, voter roll accuracy, chain of custody, and post-election transparency. And whether you agree with the president politically or not, those structural questions still remain today. They didn't go away because the news cycle did. Tonight, we're going to talk about what was actually exposed, what the Constitution actually allows, and how recent legal developments combined with the SAVE Act may finally give Americans what they've been asking for, confidence, not compliance. Also, please check out our website at No Kings on the Hill with drhilllaw.com. Follow us on our other social media pages and check out all of our past episodes. Also, please hit the subscribe or follow button and the notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. And hit that like button or tap the screen to share and engage with us in the comments. It's what makes the show better. We will answer questions or reply to comments that pertain to the current subject or further our listeners' or audience's knowledge. And also, please include your state or city so we can introduce you before we reply. Also, thanks to the Patriots Prayer Network for having us and making sure to check out all of the other great Christian conservative creators on the network. And now for a word from our sponsor. If I can find where it went to. Well, maybe tonight I won't do a word from our sponsor if I cannot find the... There it is. All right. Sorry about that. Start there. Here we go now. Now for the word from our sponsor.
Heard of Q Broadcast? It's taking the world by storm. People are cutting the cord to their high cable bills and moving away from streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and others for something better. Q Broadcast. For just $60 a month, you'll get access to every channel you could ever want, including HBO, Cinemax, and Stars. And the best part? There are no contracts, no hidden fees, and you're free to cancel anytime. With Q Broadcast, you can enjoy streaming live TV, movies, and top series on up to 5 devices at once. Whether you're at home or on the go, Q Broadcast makes sure your entertainment is always at your fingertips. Imagine being able to watch all your favorite channels from anywhere, anytime, without any restrictions. We're talking about thousands of movies, hundreds of TV series, and a huge library of live channels, all in one place. And don't forget video on demand and pay-per-view events. Those are included at no extra cost, so you'll never miss a big event again. Now, take a second and think about your current cable bill. You're probably paying anywhere between $100 and $300 every month, locked into long-term contracts and hit with surprise rate increases. With Q Broadcast, that's a thing of the past. It's just $60 a month. No contracts, no extra fees, no hidden costs, and no price hikes. Why juggle multiple subscriptions like Netflix, Hulu, and cable when Q Broadcast gives you everything you need in one convenient package? People everywhere are switching to Q Broadcast, saving money and getting more content than ever before. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description and sign up for Q Broadcast today. Just $60 a month, no contracts, no hidden fees. It's time to take control of your entertainment and start streaming smarter.
All right. And so welcome back. And first tonight, thank you for listening to No Kings on the Hill with Dr. Alonzo St. Clair. So first, the problem. We have mistaken administration with verification. States run elections. That's not up for debate. However, when those elections determine who sits in Congress or who ultimately becomes president, the federal government and by extension, the American people have every right to know those elections were completed lawfully and can be verified. In recent election cycles, Americans witnessed mass mail-in voting being implemented with little to no uniform standards. Voter rolls aged into useless repositories. Chain of custody laws were written on napkins. And once ballots were cast and counted, verification became a hollow pursuit. When President Trump pointed out these problems, he was laughed out of court. Judges told voters to calm down. News outlets called it dangerous. We were told to have faith in a system that asked for our trust but gave us no verification. And that needs to change. Verification should be rewarded with trust, not the other way around. Now, recently there was a 5-4 Supreme Court ruling that may help Boston, Illinois, which affirmed what many constitutionalists already know. States do not have free reign over federal elections simply because a state claims a candidate can't prove the rule or issue change the outcome of the election. Congress has the power to regulate the time, place, and manner of federal elections, and ensuring they are completed lawfully is well within that right. The SAVE Act takes that first step. Critics will bleed it voter suppression, when in reality, this is just voter verification. Verifying eligibility through proof of citizenship and clean voter rolls doesn't suppress anyone's vote. It protects the votes of everyone who plays by the rules. But what good is it that if there is no independent verification after election night? Enter a limited federal voter fraud oversight board, one that does not seek to control state elections, but merely verifies the outcomes of federal congressional races and the presidential race. Have this board verify eligibility before a federal mail-in ballot is issued. Check that the chain of custody was followed, require documentation that all mail-in ballots were sent only to federal eligible voters, and match all counted ballots against voter rolls after state certification. Oversight is not the same as seizing control. Verification does not equal federal interference. In fact, constitutionally, Congress already has the power to do this. They just don't. As of right now, this is what I've been using as an example lately is, okay, so Democrats run the state of California. And so pretty much every person that runs or counts ballots in the state of California is Democrat. So Democrats, do you expect Republicans to believe that if there was a proof of any type of corruption or fraud or abuse that that would take those Democrats out of power, that they're actually going to admit it or show it? And same thing for if you were a Democrat looking at Texas. Would you expect Republicans to do the same? Would you trust them to tell you what really happened if there was any fraud that would have helped Democrats win? Of course you wouldn't. I wouldn't expect you to, and you shouldn't expect me to trust that. That's why we need an independent, bipartisan board that has nothing to do with the government, that goes out and verifies all this stuff so people can know that one vote counts as one person is one vote. So we need to clean it up and protect everyone. Legitimize the republic. If you want Americans to shut up and vote, then show us a system we can trust. Force us to have faith in our elections, and we'll lose our constitutional republic forever. Transparency hurts nobody. In fact, it's the only thing that will save our republic. Now, this is recent, and these are polling data from people like, this is coming from people like CNN, MSNBC, leftist sites. And so before we dive into our constitutional jurisprudential justifications with me and my co-host, Joe, he's not feeling that well today, so I'm trying to not have to involve him in too much, but I will bring him up here in a minute to debate that part, the constitutional part. But for now, I want to go over the justifications for the SAVE Act. Now, it's worth revisiting public support for election integrity initiatives because this is no longer hypothetical. Fresh polling reveals that vast majorities of Americans back core election integrity provisions that are the foundation of the SAVE Act. National polls show that more than 80% of Americans support voter ID laws, including photo ID requirements and proof of citizenship requirements when registering to vote. That's not an extreme number. That is what they've shown. It's consistent and holds true among Republicans, independents, and Democrats. If you've actually watched the video of CNN clip that's on there, when they broke it down by race, white was 85, Hispanics were 82, blacks or African Americans were 76. When you looked at Republicans versus Democrats, it was 95% of Republicans, 76% of Democrats. So this is something that is bipartisanly supported. This isn't something that's just wild and out there. While Gallup found that Americans support policies such as expanded voting access through early voting and automatic voter registration, it has also found that voters want verification processes such as photo ID and citizenship requirements when registering to vote. Americans want access and they want integrity. You don't have to read into conspiracy theories or online forums when it comes to supporting both ideas. They're checking both of these boxes. So that's what I'm talking about here. We're not trying to rehash 2020. This is what happens when you want to expand access to voting and maintain the integrity of our elections. The SAVE Act does help with just that. Now, the SAVE Act doesn't seek to suppress the vote. It ensures that only eligible voters can vote and that we can verify it moving forward. And we'll examine the court decisions upholding voter ID laws and the constitutionality of the federal election oversight. And that's my only argument today, is that that's what we need to add, needs to be added to the SAVE Act, is an amendment that does the federal election board. Now I'm gonna go ahead and bring Joe up and get his position on it, and we can go from there.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I like the energy today. One thing I was going to say is that this is pretty common sense, right? Remember our founding father, Thomas Paine, he wrote the pamphlet Common Sense, saying it's common sense that you cannot opt your child in or sell your child into slavery. One generation cannot opt into slavery for another generation. It's common sense that our society functions like an organism, like a body, like a host. And voter IDs function as the whiter T cells, right? The identify friend or foe. When a pathogen enters the body, you have cells in there that identify which are the friendlies and which are obviously hostile viruses or, you know, any sort of malignant growth. So there's a feedback loop that occurs once you get infected, right? The infection suppresses your immune system. More of the virus is able to enter your body, and soon the host itself dies and withers away, just like the parasites along with it. So just like Thomas Paine had the common sense to say, hey, no one alive today can sell future posterity, future generations into slavery. We need to recognize that unless we get this situation under control, it's essentially like we are a body that has a suppressed immune system, and we're going to keep getting sick until the host dies or passes away. And obviously, when one organism dies, another emerges from that. But I think obviously most of us would like to save our system and way of life.
Oh yeah, and what I don't, and that's what's funny is everybody is trying to do it, and I'm gonna actually I'm thinking of I was gonna go back into my I'm gonna see if I can find the video. I was gonna play it, the highlight of the video that shows that this isn't something that's just okay. Only Republicans support. This isn't something that's just, and that's why I talked about this on a couple different TikTok lives, and I talked about this with a liberal. And what I thought is what we should do is we should have like maybe it's a new board every election, and it's one Democrat, one Republican, and one independent picked from every state. All right, and they monitor at the federal level. They check the mail-in ballots before they're sent out to make sure that they're sent out to the people that they're supposed to go out to. They're actually citizens to vote, and that they actually live in those houses. Then once the vote's over, they ensure that it stayed that way with the mail-in ballots, that none of them are fake, that that there's a chain of custody was kept. And then they also check that all the regular votes that were cast actually match the voter rolls. And so that way, because obviously some of the voting roll stuff, the SAVE Act has to do with as far as your citizenship, but it doesn't control the mail-in ballots. And while every Democrat will sit there and say, "Oh," like that one that came up on my show that goes like, according to the Brennan Law Center of Justice and CNN or whatever, their fraudulent use of mail-in ballots is 0.0000413 or whatever percent. And I'm like, well, that's because Democrats, it's the states that count it right now. There is no national database. There is no national verification. It's all done at state level. And like I said a minute ago in my intro, it's like, how do you expect a Republican to believe that Democrats who control the state of California, if they see anything that's fraudulent, are actually going to report it? And same as for if you're a Democrat, I wouldn't expect you to believe or trust necessarily everything that comes out for mail-in ballots in the state of Texas, because of the fact that, and that's just being devil's advocate there, is why would Texas or any Republican-held state make those reports? Even though ballot harvesting, ballot curing, and mail-in ballots, 90% go towards benefiting Democrats, not Republicans. Mail-in ballots, all that. So it's hard to say that, oh, you would see much cheating from that on the Republican side. But to be devil's advocate, just saying, why would you expect a Democrat to trust a Republican state when there's no outside independent form that's actually investigating this information? It's not trying to say that, oh, there's to try to say that there's not more fraud in these mail-in ballots is ridiculous because these states are not going out there and ensuring that the houses that they're sending these mail-in ballots to, that those people still live there, that these people haven't passed away, or that they're still of sound mind and body and they're the ones actually voting, and it's not their kids signing the voting form. Because that's what is going. I mean, that's literally the problem. There is, there's too much loopholes there, especially with this mass as they increase the mail-in ballots come this last election. And it's funny that now Democrats support mail-in ballots, but if you go back in the early 90s and stuff, they were totally against them, just like they were strong on the borders and deportations back then. But all of a sudden now they're not. Well, there's another video on CNN that shows that if you take the negative net migration to California and the blue wall states versus the positive net migration to the red states, as of right now, not including any deportations, just if the current levels stay true until 2030, Democrats would lose 7 seats, Republicans would gain 7. And the initial blue walls that they said, oh, Kamala Harris just needs to win these states to get to 270. And based on the 2030 census, due to the congressional seats and the electoral college votes that those blue states would lose, she would have only gotten to 263. So that's another reason why these Democrats are so fighting against deportation, is because of the fact that you take millions of illegal immigrants out of their states, whether they can vote or not, whether you claim they're voting or not, they still count towards congressional seats and electoral college votes in the census. So if Trump gets 10 million or 15 million illegal immigrants deported across the United States, that's going to be some, and especially with a lot of them being in bigger blue states, that is going to be a lot of congressional seats and electoral college votes lost for the Democrats. I mean, it could make it where it's near impossible for them to win another presidential election until the next census.
I mean, we need to update the law so that it's not just apportionment based on number of human bodies. They also need to switch it to say only U.S. citizens or eligible voters if they have a green card.
Well, and that's what we know. Well, we know the Supreme Court back in 2016, 2017, when Trump tried to back in 2019, 2020, when he tried to submit a citizenship question in the census, they ruled that was when they ruled that they could do that.
Honestly, like the IRS exists. They have robust government agencies that are capable of, various types of surveillance, whether that's, economic data, whether it's the amount of, pollution put into the air. They have a decent idea of how many human beings live in a specific area. So, one of the things is that when you have tougher deportation policies, then people self-deport. So, yeah, the number, I apologize, the number that Trump is deporting right now, he's getting hemmed up, he's getting slowed down. But the number of people who are opting in to leave the country, that's even huge. That's even huger. But obviously, those same illegal aliens that are leaving red states are going to end up going to blue states, so long as these sanctuary cities and sanctuary states still exist, which that's obviously totally unconstitutional.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get this on the shared screen. I'm going to pause it for a second because I got to bring it up. I need to move this over a page so I can see it, but I'll bring us into the shared and then bring this on stage. All right. So this is to prove they don't believe what we're saying. Here's to prove exactly what I'm saying. And this is coming from CNN. These are polls CNN's created, not Fox News.
All this polling on the screen going back since 2018, you'll notice on all of it, it's all north of 75%, 76%, 76%, 76%, 81%, and then 83% in the last year of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj. They favor photo ID to be able to vote.
What about by party? What's the party breakdown?
Yeah, normally you might expect, hey, there'd be a big divide by party with Republicans really for it and Democrats really against it. But not really here. I mean, just take a look here. Favor photo ID to vote. You got 95% of Republicans, pretty much all of them, but even 71% of Democrats favor photo ID to vote. So again, Nicki Minaj posting that on X, And what you see is that the American people, actually, it's not really all that controversial. The American people are with Nicki Minaj, whether they are Republican or even if they are Democrats. We're talking about 7 in 10 Democrats agreeing with Nicki Minaj that you, in fact, should show a photo ID to vote.
What's the racial breakdown?
Okay, what's the racial breakdown on this, right? Because I think a lot of people make the argument that people of color, non-white Americans, have a harder time procuring a photo ID to vote. But even here, take a look here, favorite photo ID to vote. 85% of white people favor it, 82% of Latino, 76% of Black Americans favor it. So the bottom line is this: voter ID is not controversial in this country. A photo ID to vote is not controversial in this country. It is not controversial by party, and it is not controversial by race. The vast majority of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj that, in fact, you should have a photo ID to be able to vote.
So something of a non-controversy, in other words.
Very good.
I mean, this is literally, it's that simple. And you still, the only people that think it's controversial anymore are the Democrats in power. It's Chuck Schumer, it's Nancy Pelosi, it's all of that. It's not your regular Americans. It's not your everyday, the majority of your Democratic Party. It's that small percentage that has got an issue with it. I mean, it's ridiculous. And for everybody that says that there's nothing in the that there's all this stuff in the SAVE Act that's not in there is not true. It's very simple. There's not much to it. Literally just requires a couple different ID things. No, and actually I think it'll be easier to, instead of sharing the bill, it'll be easier for me to do this on my shared stage. Remove that from the stage. Let me add this. I'll just go to my, so this is just a copy of the bill, but I put it into Chat GPT to pull up to make a summary of it. So the requirements is the SAVE Act says a state shall not accept or process a federal election registration application unless documentary proof of U.S. citizenship is presented. And that's what makes this constitutional. It's constitutional for Congress to manage federal elections, not state elections. That means that the states can still allow residents whatever they want to get vote IDs, an ID or vote without an ID if it has to do with state level House, state level Senate seats, state governor, lieutenant governor, judgeships, judicial.
Are you talking right now?
Oh, it's not. Yeah. Can you hear me? You can hear my voice, can't you? You can hear my voice. Oh yeah, I can. Okay, it says
I just heard you for the first time.
Oh, I don't know why you couldn't hear me, but pretty much what I was saying is the reason why the SAVE Act.
I can't hear you right now.
Well, everybody else can hear me, so I don't know why you're having trouble. Let me message you on. So I don't know why he can't hear me, but anyways, the reason why is under the Constitution, the federal government cannot restrict state elections, but they can restrict federal elections. All right. So the requirements currently under this bill are that you have to have a real ID compliant ID that indicates U.S. citizenship, a U.S. passport, certain military ID plus record, government photo ID showing U.S. birth, or government photo ID plus supporting docs, which include a certified birth certificate with specific features, meaning it has to be the state certified birth certificate. It's got the state seal on it. It can't just be a copied one or printed one somewhere. Can't be a scanned copy or a PDF. It has to be the original one. Hospital record of birth, adoption decree, consular report of birth abroad, naturalization, citizenship certificate, etc. Mail registration, you can't just mail the form. Proof must be presented to an election official. So no more being able to, I guess Joe had to come back out and come back in because he's having an issue hearing. But it will not allow you to just go in there and register to vote anymore in the mail. Like they can't send you a registration card in the mail to register to vote, not for federal elections anymore if the SAVE Act passes. Then it also requires them to clean their voter roll, clean their voter rolls up, and requires them to set up a system for making sure that they're verifying citizenship of every person that's on that voter roll. It's already on the rolls, and if once they find out they're not a citizen, they have to clean them off. And if they don't, for the federal election side, there is now civil and criminal penalties, which gives this bill teeth to force states and to actually enforce the law, which everybody should want. Honestly, I believe we looked at this last voting session. Out of 75% of the voting age people to vote were registered, but only about 63% of those people actually showed up to vote. And that was still high. It wasn't record high as in 2020 where it was 66, but it was still higher than usual. During midterms, they're usually about 30 to 40% that actually show up. And I believe one of the reasons why a lot of people don't show up is because they don't believe their vote counts. They believe that there's too much cheating going on, there's too much fraud, there's too many illegals voting, and their one vote doesn't count as one person. So requiring the photo ID to vote, requiring the citizenship to vote, there's no way that somebody could vote in multiple states. There's no way non-citizens are voting, and then more people will actually feel secure in their votes. Now, the first year, well, it slowed down a little bit because states are going to have to figure out better ways to get people registered to vote in person because they can no longer mail them voter registration cards in the mail, and they have to verify it in person. But after the states figure that out, I have a feeling that the voter participation rates are going to go up, not down, because this argument that, oh, it's harder for people to get IDs. The only people that don't have IDs are homeless people. And homeless people don't give a shit about politicians or voting. They care about what they're going to eat the next day, what they're going to get to drink, where they're going to lay their head at. Are they going to have a roof over their head? Are they going to freeze to death or not? That's all they're caring about. Anybody else, anybody who's living in an apartment, a house, drives a car, has a job, has a bank account, has an ID, because you need an ID to do all that stuff. You need one to open a bank account. You need one to get your check. You need one to cash a check. You need one to rent a hotel, get an apartment, a house, a car, insurance. Go down the list. I mean, the concept of, voter ID somehow suppression is ridiculous. Can you hear me now, Joe?
Yeah, I think it's the hotel Wi-Fi doesn't something with the firewall and the audio. I when I rejoined, I was able to pick it back up, but I don't know why it popped off.
Yeah, pretty much. I was reading the bill and showing that the reason why the SAVE Act is constitutional is because it only enforces the requirement for voter ID and citizenship at the federal level, not the state. So states like California or Minnesota that want to allow one person to vote to vouch for 8 people saying that they're U.S. citizens and residents of the state, or California that want, or either those, Oregon, Washington, that still want to give IDs out to illegal immigrants and allow them to vote in state or city or county elections, they can. But they can't do it for the federal elections. They'll have to create a separate registration for the federal elections because this will require, and that's where it makes it constitutional. It doesn't step on states' rights because it keeps that separation. They're not going in and forcing on the states' voter level, even though some states could decide to do this.
I think they're going to find a lot more fraud than just immigrants voting. I think that they're going to uncover a large number of people that are voting that probably shouldn't be voting.
Oh, yeah,
right?
And that's another thing is this forces people to clean their voter rolls because there's states that haven't cleaned their voter rolls in years. And it's like, that was my thing is if you got people that have passed away, but they haven't been removed from the voter rolls and they were elderly and you're still sending out their registration cards, who's to say somebody doesn't grab that card and vote for it if you're not actually checking to verify that that person's still alive, if you're not checking to verify that person still lives in the house, if you're not checking signature cards, whatever, how do you know? Really? I mean, it's that simple. It's just common sense. Whether you can prove that, of course we can't prove it. Yeah.
They proved pretty effective at IDing people on January 6th. So I just, where their attention, where they focus it is entirely a consequence of who's in power and obviously who they favored, dislike politically.
No, and that's why I say we need an outside bipartisan committee to monitor and control this stuff. And maybe they serve like a 2-year time span or a 4-year time span election wise, and they're picked by their individual people in the state, or they're picked by some random generation by voter registration or voting records of just regular normal people who are willing to volunteer or want the job to do it, not elected or appointed by elected officials, stuff like that, not people that are super rich or tied in with the super elite, but just regular people like where I'm at. I just got a call yesterday that they've moved forward with putting me on the zoning board of adjustments. I didn't even know I don't have any connection to the city council, but I'm still getting appointed to it. So we need something like that does it, but on a national scale, and have a national database that actually tracks this so it can be tracked and kept track of what's going on, so people can actually believe that their elections are secure. I mean, now luckily, thanks. Yep. Now, if I could just find a new job, but obviously if I get this board posting, that'll be good to put on my resume, and it'll get me connections in the city council and maybe in the GOP and the political side realm of the city I'm in. So that could also help out too with maybe getting some consulting gigs or whatever. And yeah, no. And Elliot, you are correct. It is the far left that will lose their power and control, and it will force the Democratic Party to actually come back to the center where the majority of the Democratic Party lies. That's why Trump ran as a Republican, not a Democrat. It's not because he's a Republican. It's because the Democrats went so far left, and they've allowed that far left to control their party. We honestly need to get rid of this tribalism. We need to get rid of these parties. We need to destroy the GOP and the DNC. Obviously, we'll always have Federalist, Anti-Federalist, Originalist, Living Constitutionalist, non-progressives, progressives. We'll always have constitutionalists or progressives. We'll always have that. We'll always have different ideologies. But the fact is the majority of us, except for maybe 5% on each side or a little less than that on each side, we all want the same thing. We want to leave a better world for our children. We want to be able to be successful, grow the middle class, create a bigger middle class. We just have different ideas to get there. And if we can actually listen to each other and discuss and debate, then we can hold our leaders accountable. Everybody asks why our leaders keep on being able to get away with stuff on either side. It's because the DNC and the GOP control everything so much that nobody who supports one side or the other will dare vote for the other side or will dare across the aisle to come to a politically agreeable area in policy. We need to get back to where our politicians are voting on policy, not party.
Well, they called Ron Paul Dr. No, and his son hasn't been as faithful to that moniker, but I know Massey has kind of continued in that same vein of libertarian. I'm not going to allow any pork barrel spending on any of the bills that I vote yes on.
Yeah, and I'm not even necessarily talking about. I'm just talking about because the thing is people wonder why our government, why we're so divided. And I mean, they told us, and our founding fathers literally went through all this stuff. I mean, they literally stated that if we go look through here and we look and go through a couple different ones, Federalist number 10, the central warning, Madison does not flatter the people. He assumes error is inevitable and designs around it. As long as the reason of a man continues fallible and he is at liberty to exercise it, different opinions will be formed. The latent cause of faction are thus shown in the nature of man. Madison treats ignorance, misinformation, and passion as permanent features of popular government, not temporary defects. Madison in Federalist 49 explicitly warns against frequent appeals to the people because ignorance plus emotion overwhelm judgment. And that's what we're seeing right now with the tribalism in the party, is where the ignorance is allowing people's emotion to overwhelm their actual reasonable judgment and to make logical judgments. And as he said, it is a truth. The passions, therefore, not the reason of the public, would sit in judgment. There's longer to it, but it's just kind of a quote of it, that it is a truth which the experience of ages has attested, that the people are commonly most in error when they are most confident. And
yeah.
And then
it's funny that they put it so succinctly, because they do kind of describe, this basic kind of human triangle regarding the desire for power, right? There are those who want power in order to dominate, manipulate others. There are those that want to be left alone. And then there are those who essentially understand that in order to be left alone, they can't just bend over backwards and allow those power hungry, thirsty people to run wild. So, I mean, part of what you're saying, obviously George Washington preached against political parties. He preached against permanent alliances. However, I think it's also important to talk about is that the founding fathers as a whole were opposed to secret societies. And when we're looking at, you know, the modern makeup of our society, you can see what institutions, what agencies within the federal government have the most power. And it's those agencies that are operating in secrecy. So we saw that again. We saw that during Biden administration, where they started. If you're a veteran, if you're a Christian, if you are a PTA member, and you oppose vaccine mandates, then all of a sudden you're on a list. And I can't be in favor of that happening to my political opponents right now. I do think that there's a difference in behavior. I don't think that anyone on the right wasn't burning cities or in mass organizing autonomous zones. That's nothing that we've seen nothing like that from the right, and that's all come
And
from the left. But they conflate January 6th with exactly what they're doing to us. They're projecting it on and that's just fundamental human nature, like you're saying.
well, and like I want to read this one. It's Federalist number 1, demagogues exploit ignorance. And this is what we're seeing from the far left. And we see sometimes from the far right too, the powers and the people in power anyways. Hamilton is blunt. Public ignorance is a weapon. He goes, of those men who have overturned the liberties of republics, the greatest numbers have begun their career by paying an obsequious court to the people, commencing demagogues and ending tyrants. And the translation is ignorant electorates are easily seduced by rhetoric, slogans, and false promises. And we see that with Mandami. We see that going on in Minnesota, that with all that they're trying to do all this stuff to distract from the fraud and to try to slow down Trump's deportations. It has nothing to do with their anti-deportation. It has to do with their agenda to keep from the fraud coming out and from people being able to see that from them losing their power and losing their votes, because they know the majority of the Democratic Party is not far left like they think they are. They're more to the center. And in order to stay in the power, because they're losing so many votes and so many Democrats going to the right, that they need all those illegal immigrants for more seats, for votes, for everything. That's why they're against. That's the only reason that makes sense of why they're so against IDs. When the Supreme Court has ruled that it is not unconstitutional, when over 80% of the population agrees with voter ID and requiring citizenship checks before they vote. But yet, for some reason, Democrats in the Senate and the House all say that, it's reclaim the Jim Crow era and all this BS. It has nothing to do with being racist or being an issue with voter ID. It has all to do with the fact that they don't want to lose votes, that they don't want to lose power. It has nothing to do with what's the best for the American people or what's best for our country. It's what keeps us so divided as a people. It's why we aren't holding our leaders accountable on either side, is because we are so divided by tribalism. It's like the Bloods and the Crips. I've been using that analogy because it's blue and red. And Crips are blue, Bloods are red, Democrats are blue, Republicans are red. I mean,
it's like the Sunni and the Shiite.
Yeah.
It's like Protestant and Catholics, or Catholics and Orthodox, or Catholics and Jewish people.
Sorry, and no, I do not have a speech impediment. Just some of the words got me a little tongue-tied when I was trying to speak it on a camera. And sometimes when you're sitting there trying to remember words off the top of your head, not looking from a script, you mess a word a little bit. And I would like to see you read half of the old English words that are in freaking the Federalist Papers out loud and actually pronounce them correctly.
I mean, it might be talking to me. I am kind of wheezing a little bit.
Now, if you're talking about Joe, he's sick. He's not feeling good. That's why he doesn't have his camera on. That's why he is in the background. That's that. But yeah, so I'll go back. Let me go back to the bill. So what I was proposing on the SAVE Act changes, as far as what we should do, because we don't fully have this yet, is obviously the SAVE Act requires the verification of citizenship plus voter ID laws. And it also actually does have teeth set in it that there is civil and criminal just outcomes if the states don't follow along. Now, as far as people saying, "Oh, this may not be right," but thing is in Article 2, Section 1, states appoint presidential electors in such manners as the legislator therefore may direct. And then also, if you go into Election Clause, Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution, the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations. The Supreme Court has repeatedly held that this clause gives Congress broad but not unlimited authority over procedural mechanics of federal elections only. Arizona v. Internal Tribal Council of Arizona, the court held Congress can preempt state election rules governing federal elections, even if states object. Implication: Congress may impose verification, reporting, and monitoring rules for voting registration for federal elections, issuance of federal ballots, and maintenance of federal election voter rolls. And then Congress may retain its authority to regulate counting of electoral votes and protect the integrity of the presidential election process. Burroughs v. United States upheld federal regulation protecting presidential elections because they are national in character. What SCOTUS president says a federal monitoring system may do. Under existing precedent, Congress may constitutionally authorize a federal system that verifies voter rolls for federal elections only, cross-checks citizenship or eligibility for federal ballot access, requires states to maintain separate or tagged federal election rolls if necessary. Requires reporting and transparency. Congress may require states to report roll maintenance actions, document mail ballot issuance and rejection rates, provide federal access to audit data for federal elections. And now that right there is shown. We see let's go to Fulton County. The federal government was asking for access to the mail-in ballots for a certain amount of mail-in ballots in Fulton County. Fulton County was refusing to give them up. They had to get, even once they got a warrant to get them, they still had to forcefully go remove them. But constitutionally, Congress could pass a law where states have to turn all that over. Obviously, they can't count the actual during the election, but they can verify it after the election. And now also, our congressional members need to realize that they can also now go out and they can start challenging these voter rolls and regulations before fact, thanks to Boss v. Illinois. They no longer have to wait until after an election and somehow prove what they felt was unjust or illegal, actually overturn the election, which if they're not able to view behind the curtain or verify the data or verify chain of custody or anything like that, how can they prove that that law didn't overturn the election? How are they going to prove that if they can't get into it because the attorney general of that state and everybody that's controlling the voting of that state and the ballots are not allowing the federal government to see it? I mean, it's simple as that. And so that's what we need. I think we need to have that an amendment added to this SAVE Act to also, because a lot of people said, oh, mail-in ballots in there, but it's not. The only thing that's in there currently right now is strictly just citizenship and voter ID. And then obviously the ability to go after the states criminally for not doing it and forcing them to clean their voter rolls. Because I can't remember what states are, but there are states that haven't cleaned their voter rolls in 5-10 years. I mean, Texas does it every couple months. There's other states that do it once a year or once every 6 months. But there's states like California and Oregon or Washington or Minnesota that haven't cleaned their voter rolls in 5-10 years. Yeah, you are correct, Richard. And I totally agree with you. This country is a republic. There was the Tories, the Whigs, Republican, Democrat, and all others. And that's what I mean is there's nothing wrong with those. Just were kind of used to describe people's different views and political beliefs and understandings. But what we got to get away from is this two-party, this tribalism of it's one way or the other, and to where we can actually start working together. And we've got to start teaching civics in school again, because so many people call us a democracy. They don't understand that we are actually a constitutional republic. And we've got midterms coming up in less than a month now for the primaries anyways. Texas, the Republican primaries are March the 4th, if I remember correctly, March 4th or 5th. Other states, it's the 3rd or almost every state somewhere between the 3rd and the 5th. And this is a very important election because right now, with the slim majorities that the Republicans have in Congress and the Senate, and pretty much since the range of the 1933 to like 1953, when Democrats held control of the presidency, the House, and the Senate for 20 years. Other than that, pretty much every party that's controlled both houses in the when the president was elected have lost one of those houses, if not both, at the midterms. If the Republicans lose both houses, Trump will be impeached and removed from office. If we lose Congress, he will be impeached after congressional hearing, going after all of his cabinet members. But the Senate will never remove him from office. If we keep a hold of the House but lose the Senate, then nothing will get passed. None of the bills that he wants codified, that executive orders will get codified that haven't been done. None of the legislation for his agendas that over 77 million people elected him to do will get done because the Democrats will have control of that. This is an election that we need to pretend like Trump is on the ballot. This is not because he is. We have got to keep power of the House and Senate, because usually what happens is the party that's in power, they get complacent and be like, oh, we've got this, we'll win, we're doing great. But the thing is the party that's not in power, they usually hate everything that's going on. So they're even more energized to get out and turn out to vote. So they turn out and mass their numbers, and then we lose one of the House. Then the person in power loses one of the houses. So what we've got to do is ensure that we don't lose that power. We've got to keep control of the House and the Senate so we can fix all the shit that happened, got screwed up over those 20 years, and all the socialist shit and screw up that Obama did. And that happened under Biden with all the freaking him not even running it and his team running it through AutoPen. We've got to make sure that all that stuff gets fixed. And if John Thune is not willing to either nuke the filibuster or use the standing filibuster to get the SAVE Act passed, then senators and the Republican Senate, you need to remove him from leadership, because obviously he does not got the spine to do what needs to be done. Because this bill, the SAVE Act, should be as it is right now, should be an easy bill to pass. The amendment that I'm pushing for, that would make it a little more controversial, even though it shouldn't. It should be a nonpartisan thing that we want elections that can be proven that they are that they're fair and equal on all sides. Because I truly believe that would bring more people out to vote. I don't know what you think, Joe, but I think more people would show up to vote if they could believe that there wasn't any cheating or ballot stuffing or illegal votes going on, and that their one vote actually counted as one person.
I think Republicans are going to win. I think that, they vilified Trump for so long over so many different things that, there's not too many people that are undecided on Trump. And I just look around and I feel like I have a very good sense of the collective energy and the difference between when Biden was president and Trump is in president. The level of optimism, positivity, and actually, being proud to be an American. This is not something you saw under Biden. So I just don't see how an entirely regressive political, movement that has, virtue tests and purity tests. I don't see how that's going to attract more people. And, the Democrats have been very good at mobilizing and when Trump's not on the ticket, but, they've been hemorrhaging voters in voter registration, and people have been going towards Republicans for the better part of a year now.
And don't get me wrong, I know that we have right now, we've got we're 100 million with no debt for the RNC or the GOP, and the DNC is in like $5 million in debt or something. I mean, they've got more debt than they have cash on hand. So I know we've got the money to do it, but we've got to get better at messaging, because I've had a couple different Democrats come up on my lives on TikTok and ask about the SAVE Act when I had it put up there, and the stuff that they thought was on the SAVE Act is not even in there. We've got to get better at messaging and better at promoting our bills and our legislation and overpowering all this lies and false rhetoric that comes out from CNN and MSNBC and ABC and CBS and all these Dean Withers and all these other leftist creators out here that are paid to push a script that's not even right. Because when I actually showed him what was in the bill, and he goes, oh, well, this must be an old bill. I'm like, no, this is HR 22. This is literally the bill that just got passed and sent over to the Senate in the last couple of weeks. This is not some old version of the bill. This is the most up-to-date current version of the bill. And they were telling them there's all this other stuff in there and making it think like it's worse than it is, or that it makes it harder than it is when it doesn't. So we've got to get better at that messaging. We do got to come out, because the thing is also is we've got close to 30 Republicans retiring between the House and the Senate. And even if those are in some really deep red areas, like I know that if I was to run for office in Williams, my district, which is Congressman Williams, when he retires, right now while he's running, Democrats don't even run against him. He doesn't even have a competition. He only has to run the primary on the Republican side, and then he goes unchallenged on the general. But I can guarantee you that if he retires and I was to run, the Democrats would put up contenders in this, even though they'll probably still lose, they would still try to win. So then because we're both no name recognition, it would come down to who can get the biggest turnout for votes. And if it's in a presidential election, you're not. So even though this is a deep red, my district, my congressional district is deep red and has been Republican for the last more than 30, 40 years. And so that's the problem, is we got to ensure that those 30 districts that are up for retirement, that people are get out and voting, because if they don't turn out, they could flip Democrat, like we saw in the in some of the special elections. Now, obviously, turnouts are even lower in the special elections because some people don't even know when those are happening. But we've got to get better at our messaging and getting people out to vote and organizing to get people out to vote. That's what we've got to get better at, because Democrats are great at that. And while I would love to think, I believe we can win, I don't want us to get complacent and go, oh, we've got this. I want us to pretend like everything's on the line and we're going to lose if we don't get out and vote, because that's what we need. A woman said, SAVE Act is oppressive to women's votes. That's hilarious. That makes no sense, because to say everybody has IDs, that doesn't. Everybody has a driver's license.
That has to be a troll.
Yeah.
There's no way anybody actually is connecting those two
And
ideas.
Dethra Bello, you are correct. I believe you. That's just common sense. Is California, 40% of their, and also that's another thing that was a disappointment today, and that's another reason why we got to be careful, is because the Supreme Court would not denied to hear the challenge for the California new congressional map on the emergency docket. So now the California is going to be possibly adding 5 more Democratic congressional seats, and they'll go down to like only 2 Republican congressional seats, even though in this last election, 43% of Californians voted Republican. Less than 10%, like now, like only 7% of, they'll have like 40% of the state being Republicans will only have a 7% representation.
I don't know why those people are sticking around California at this point. You know.
Well, and that's why California is so.
Get out
that's
while
why
you still can.
Well, that's why California and Minnesota are so worried about the deportations, is because they're not people. California for the last 2 or 3 years has had a net negative migration for the first time in a long time, where Texas and Georgia and Florida and the southern states, the red states, are having a net positive migration. So we're seeing a lot of those Republicans and even the more moderate Democrats who are switching parties moving down here and out of that state. That's why they're going to be losing congressional seats and the executive. But I was going to say, I want to show one other thing, is for anybody who wants to argue against the Electoral College, is the Federalist Papers pretty much warn you about it. And that is that the whole point of the Electoral College, and this was even foreseen back then, was even when there was only 13 colonies, it's almost like they saw that we were going to expand the United States. When there was only 13 colonies, even then, the majority of the population of the whole United States lived on the coastal regions. They lived in Boston, New York City, New Jersey, the Virginia coastline. That's where everybody lived. Nobody lived inland. And so the whole point of the Electoral College was to stop a minority from controlling the area. And for any people that don't really understand that, it means stop a majority party, the majority of the population, but in a minority of the country, from controlling the whole politics of the rest of the country. That was the whole point of Electoral College, was so that people in the middle, who maybe those states are less populated, but still want to have a say in their governing, to their votes count, versus if we didn't have the Electoral College, everything would run through New York, New Jersey, Boston, Virginia, California, Oregon, Washington. That's all you would see the presidential candidates go to. They wouldn't go to the middle. They wouldn't go to Iowa. They wouldn't go to Minnesota, Wisconsin, any of that. Because, I mean, Minnesota is 5.4 million people. There's more people that live in Dallas, Fort Worth than that. I mean, so they might go to Texas too, because we got pretty big population, but still. And that's one thing we've really got to be careful on, is we've got to get that. We've got to, we want to keep the Electoral College. And so somebody was arguing to me the other day, well, what about us taking away the nuking the filibuster? I'm like, well, if we don't do it, the Democrats have already threatened that they're going to do it, and they'll use it to stack the Supreme Court to 12 or 13 or whatever Supreme Court justices, to reverse the switch to a more originalist court. They will sit there and do it. They'll try to vote to get rid of the Electoral College. So what we need to do is we need to get the Senate to nuke the filibuster, so we can actually codify all the bills that will stop that from happening, so Trump can actually get his agenda items implemented, and we can ensure that there's a fair vote. Because I can guarantee you, if the votes are fair and he gets the amount of deportations that he gets, this is a personal opinion, but this is based off of just all data, information I've looked at, personal experiences, we could look at another 10 to 16 years of, we could look at a 20-year run of Republicans controlling the federal government like Democrats did between the 30s and the 50s. Because that's how many, in 2030, that's how many more Electoral College votes and Senate seats the Republicans would gain versus the Democrats would lose. There's a good chance that we would see a Vance, 2 terms with Vance and Rubio, and then 2 terms of Rubio. What do you think, Joe?
I mean, the thing that I see is that whether it's getting rid of the filibuster, whether it's stacking the Supreme Court, approaching this situation where it's winner takes all over the next couple of elections. This is truly the, trajectory of where our country will go. Will it be stamped out like so many other great societies and great nations by tyranny and by, people that are too lazy to self-reflect and think that being spoon-fed what's right and wrong by the internet or television, somehow they're virtuous? No, I think that, I think that, again, I'm optimistic. I know who I am. I know the country I came from, and I know that there's still the American spirit and American exceptionalism. So, it's like Dr. Hill saying, like, now is the time to not give up. And, it seems like we keep getting to the 1 yard line. And I think Trump said it before, this is the last election you'll have to vote in. Obviously, he was not right. But that's the kind of mentality that both political parties have right now, is this is the last election you'll ever have to vote in.
Oh, and Joe, that was Country Boy that sent that message over. So he's being serious. That's what somebody said in a TikTok live he was in. He's a big supporter of my TikTok lives. Country Boy, the one that said that a woman said SAVE Act is oppressive to women's votes. I believe him that somebody said that to him, because he's not a troll. He's actually that's Country Boy from TikTok.
I believe him. I don't believe the woman's assertion.
Oh yeah,
I thought she was in here saying that. I was
I noticed it said, no, this is Country Boy. And so yeah, I trust Country Boy, because he's in my lives all the time. And Country Boy, I don't know if you can see on the screen where it shows how many people are in here, but you know that it's hard to ever get anybody in my TikTok lives. And right now, according to this, our current live viewers are 570. Now, explain to me how I get 570 live viewers in here, and TikTok, I can't get free concurrent. That's 572 concurrent lives, but I can't get 20 concurrent in TikTok. It's retarded. I mean, yes, I can talk about more stuff on here. I don't have to edit myself and make unsure that I'm gonna, because especially when we're talking about election integrity and stuff here, because obviously TikTok's very will put anything misinformation or says it's harming when you're talking about election or election fraud, or you're talking about the 2020 fraud possibly being stolen, or there being massive amount of fraudulent mail-in ballot votes going on. Because even if you say you got to look at it, there's how can you not see that it could have been possible? They still take it as misinformation, even though you're not stating that as a fact. You're stating it as, look at the evidence and tell me that you cannot, from an open viewpoint, from a non-emotional or partisan viewpoint, see how it could look like that way to people, or how that could have been a possibility to happen when there are no protections. It's like, since when did we start going on the honor code? Because currently, right now, under current law, you don't, yes, you're currently, technically, you need to be a U.S. citizen to vote. But at the state level, all you have to do is check a box and attest under the threat of perjury that you're a U.S. citizen. But one, perjury is not that big of a crime. It's not that big of an offense to it. And two, it's like, most of those people, you expect everybody to tell the truth and not want to vote and say that they're a U.S. citizen, just sign it when they know nobody's probably going to check it in their state. When they know California is not going to go through and verify that they're a U.S. citizen, they're not going to go check with Social Security or DHS or any of that. They're just going to keep going. I mean, it's ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, that's what we've got. I don't see how I know it is like being elementary school again. Yeah, that's why I always try to tell everybody on my TikTok lives to come and check in here, is because if y'all want to actually hear what I have to say and do without having to edit myself or worry about what I'm saying, then, and I always say, do I think the 2020 election could have been stolen? Yes. But I don't really care about that anymore, because we can't go back in time and insert Trump in presidency for those 4 years and then run it. No, you can't do that. We can't reverse anything. So right now it's all about ensuring that we set up pass the legislation and set up the protections that we ensure that we can entrust that it doesn't happen again. Especially with during COVID, how much advantage the Democrats took care of pushing all of these mail-in ballot voting and stuff out, and that how mail-in ballot and ballot harvesting and all that stuff substantially, and the late votes coming in late, being able to come in like with Illinois' rule of where as long as it's postmarked by the election day, but it comes with, they'll accept it in the mail up to 2 weeks later. That is all benefits Democrats by a substantial margin, over like 70-80%. There's something going on there. It's just it's statistically common sense. If it's not just one election that it's gone that way. It always goes that way, which tells you that there's something going on. That's just logic. That if there was nothing going on, then it would sometimes benefit Republicans, sometimes benefit Democrats, but it always substantially benefits Democrats in the voting. And now, obviously, to overturn a presidential election, you're talking some massive numbers to do that, because there's usually a couple million votes. When you break that down by 50 states, then it's not that many votes, really. It goes down to maybe a couple hundred, tens of thousands of votes per state. Which then, when you get into state levels, though, and you look at individual senators and congressional members, you're talking votes that are separated by 10,000, 5,000, a couple hundred, 1,000 or two. It doesn't take that much cheating to get those. And that's really what affects everybody too, is you got to look at, you also want to force your states to put these protections in, because what the president and the U.S. Congress does, House and Senate, really doesn't affect your everyday life. Unless you're a millionaire, billionaire, or a major business person, most of the stuff they do will not affect you. Most of the bills they pass will not affect your life. Every once in a while, might benefit from a tax cut or one little benefit. The majority of stuff they're passing all has to do with regulations and rules on business and industry and stuff like that. It will never affect your everyday life. What affects your everyday life is your local, it's your city council members, it's your mayors, it's your justice of the peace, your magistrate judges, it's your local judges, your local sheriffs, because in a lot of cities, your mayor and your mayor and city council appoint the police chief. And unfortunately, a lot of cities don't require that police chief to have formerly been a police officer. because it's a political appointment, which I think is retarded. Just like you can, in some states, you can be a low-level judge, even above a magistrate, without ever having a JD or getting a law degree. Now, obviously, like in the state of Texas, if you want to run as a justice of the peace, which you'll never do anything over like $5,000 or $10,000 in civil, it's mainly family court, marriage is traffic court, stuff like that. You don't need a law degree to run for it, but once you do get it, you do got to take law classes or certifications and stuff like that. Now, if you want to be a criminal lawyer, a criminal judge, or a civil court judge, then yes, you need to have served as a lawyer for like 10 years. But some states don't require that. I mean, does that sound kind of crazy to you, Joe? But it's funny that it's true.
I mean, I think they need to open up the legal associations and allow more people to get barred. I think the American Bar Association has too strong of a stranglehold, which is why,
I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm talking about people who have never even been an attorney, never gotten their law degree, serving as a justice on a court, sentencing people to life in prison or sentencing people to jail.
I'll just say this. Most of what you need to know in law school, you learn in the first semester, with maybe 1 or 2 classes in the second semester. And then after that, it's just what your practice area that you're interested in is in networking. So, law school, there's black letter law classes at the beginning, but then you really kind of prepare for practice when you actually study for your jurisdiction's bar. So obviously Texas has its own.
Well, I'm actually thinking, I'm hoping that being on the zoning board of readjustments will help, even though it doesn't meet that much, because it's only when when people apply for a zoning application and that application gets denied, and then they decide to contest that denial, that the zoning board of readjustments comes in. So they don't meet that much, but I'm hoping with those connections I can get that. I'm thinking about once I officially finish my doctorates, get my manuscript published and stuff, I'm actually possibly thinking about running for justice of the peace in Johnson County if Williams hasn't retired yet. That way I can still put together a small political team, get a war chest put together per se, and be able to raise money during that time. And then if Williams is retired by the time that I serve my first term as JP, I'll already, and I go to run for U.S. Congress, I'll at least already have some political funds, campaign finances put together. And I'll already have a name recognition, or at least be known in one of the counties that I would have to run my election in. I'd be more
Seems like a
publicly
pretty
known.
solid plan.
Well, because JP is one of the few running for justice of the peace. It is the only one that my doctorate in law and policy would work for, because I don't need a JD to do that, and I wouldn't have to take any of the other law classes after I get it, because I already have my doctorate in law and policy. I mean, they would pay for me to I could use my money out of the court's budget, the Justice of the Peace budget, to finish my law degree if I wanted to go get my JD, but doubt I'll do it. Probably too many more classes. But it's one of the only ones that actually pays an annual salary in Texas, because the majority of city council, it's $5 a council meeting. Mayor of the city I live in is $10 a council meeting. You don't get paid anything. It's more of a ceremonial. I mean, obviously I live in a smaller city, so the mayor's not needing to do stuff daily and all that, constantly taking calls and doing everything. It's the city manager runs the majority of the day-to-day stuff. The mayor is more of a ceremonial and kind of the political side of it. All the day-to-day office stuff's ran by the city manager, so you don't get paid. And you can't be the city manager and the mayor in the same city. You can be a city manager in one city and a mayor in the other, but JP is actually one of the ones that actually fully pays. It's like $157,000 a year. Nice. So it's actually a job versus just it's actually a career versus anything else. But alrighty, well, we're over our hour, so I am going to take a break here, guys, and then I'll probably I'm gonna go ahead and do a TikTok live tonight. So anybody who wants to check me out on over there, it's Dr. Hill Law on TikTok. Also, you can go to I don't know why it's not streaming down here, but go to the banner the website, and on the banner that you see scrolling across the bottom of the page, www.nokingsonthehill.drhillaw.com. There on the homepage, it'll open up on the homepage up at the top right corner, or all the social media sites. You can find my TikTok link to follow me on TikTok there. Also on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and X. Then we are live every Wednesday at 5 p.m. either on the Patriot Para Network through Rumble, Facebook, and X, and then or you can find us on No Kings on the Hill with Dr. Hill Law, No Kings on the Hill YouTube, and Twitch. Currently, it's not on our Facebook page because we don't have enough people following the Facebook page to go live on it. So still currently we're going live on my personal Facebook page. But YouTube, you can find us there. You can also sign up on the website to get weekly blogs. I've been trying to do them weekly, but since there's not really anybody that's signed up yet, I haven't been doing a lot of them. Please, you can comment on there. Let us know what you think of the show. If there's any other any topics you'd like to see us cover, please let us know. Right now, with politics, with the news cycle being kind of slow, it'd be kind of nice if people that listen in here all the time would give us if we get a big vote on or a poll on what subject y'all would like to see us cover, we can do that for the next week. I am trying to work on getting 2 different interviews between now and before the primary elections here in Texas for 2 different Texas candidates, one for Texas District 35 and another one that's running down in Houston. I'm trying to get them booked for interviews, so I will let y'all know when we get that. If y'all know of anybody that would like to come on for an interview that's running for office, please let us know on the Republican side or even the Democrat, because we've got midterms coming up, and that's the big thing we got going with right now is elections. So thank you for tuning in, watching me and Joe on No Kings on the Hill with Dr. Hill Law for episode 19. And we will see y'all next Wednesday, and hope y'all have a good evening.